Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday, July 3rd. Why that's a little extra important for us Americans, whether here in America or an American, but traveling around the world. Tomorrow, meeting Thursday, is July 4th, Independence Day. So, a shout out to my beloved America. We are imperfect, aren't we all? But I'm optimistic moving forward and very much looking forward to some downtime and enjoying. Well, I'm always writing or doing something, but somewhat of a 4-day weekend and some great steak tomorrow. This is a little impromptu. I just made the announcement about really half an hour ago, and I know a little bit of an uncommon day in terms of choosing the day before a major holiday here in America on Independence Day upcoming tomorrow. And many of you know I've been pretty active in terms of promotions of a variety of things that I'm doing and how active I am this summer. Uh, yes, some of you are already asking. I've owned the cowboy hat, a real legit 10-gallon Stetson, for many a year. I wear it rather frequently. I do occasionally bring it out into one of my podcasts or programs, like I'm doing now. And perhaps the fact that July 4th, American Independence Day, is tomorrow, I feel that the 10-gallon Stetson really implies Americana a lot. And having traveled to Europe, and I took my cowboy hat with me to Austria, wearing it, I can't tell you how many times. I didn't realize how popular internationally that Chuck Norris was. Now, Chuck is like much older than me, much more accomplished and well known, and definitely a really handsome guy. So I'm up to a tough competition there. But how many people identified it as Texas? When I mention Wyoming, like they have no idea what that is. So I should almost just stick to Texas. And yes, of course. And I do agree that Chuck Norris is awesome. So the cowboy hat does travel. Some of you have typed in Robles, Texas Ranger. Let's do it. So, one of the things I'm active on this summer is my Survival of the Family Office series, which really is a series. You can't quite cover that in a write up. Yeah, one of you said I look too stuffy. Let me button up the top or unbutton the top button. I'm a little more relaxed now. There we go. It's something that is continuous, both from my perspective, but importantly from outside thought leaders and others, inclusive of me interviewing them. But what's wrong with the debate? How come we don't do that enough or at all in the family office world? And that's because some people, either potential participants or maybe those watching or listening in, feel it to be a little uncomfortable. It's not meant to be disrespectful. It's meant to say, hey, here's an important subject. It might even be, not necessarily in this case, but other things on geopolitics or politics, a so-called sensitive subject. But do we have strong beliefs? But should we not be overly anchored in? Strong opinions weakly held. There's a lot of incredibly talented people out there and people that have something to teach us, where we come in with one perspective and maybe we should be leaving to some degree with another. That doesn't mean we're weak. It means we're adaptive, and it means we're willing to learn. I always said, no matter if you are a 10th degree black belt, be buried with your white belt on. Have a beginner's mindset and always be learning. Because if you're staying stable, others are coming behind you and going to leave you in the dust as they go upwards. So I am very much open to the idea of debates. Many of you know, because I've been promoting it pretty heavily. But if you don't, this upcoming Wednesday, which is July 10th, I will be doing kind of let's call it a friendly debate with industry pundit Jamie McLaughlin, who I've known for many years and have great respect for. Maybe we'll agree on a couple of things, but certain things we're going to talk about on the survival and thriving of the single family office, we're going to have effectively very different opinions on. Now, in a perfect world, a true debate, I do understand, would be a third party intermediary that either we both know the questions going in or totally we don't, but they're going to be around the theme that we agree to. It's a little bit more of a set amount of time, and they're making sure that we don't interrupt. I do agree, and maybe in the future, I'm open-minded to who you all think could be a good moderator in something like that. And yes, I'm an extreme advocate of the single family office. I think if they're done right, single family offices are absolutely incredible and the ultimate. So I'm going to give an overview today broadly of the subject. I'm going to lay down a little bit of a gauntlet and a little bit of an open challenge because I don't want it to just be Jamie. I want others in the community. I don't care whether you're a fund manager, you're an accountant, you're an attorney, you're an advisor, you're an MFO, you're an asset manager, whoever you are. If you disagree with me, I encourage that. I give kudos to you. I shake your hand. There might be something I could learn from you. I'm probably going to kick your butt in the debate. Let's just be honest. But who knows? Maybe you'll surprise me. And I'm okay with that. Bring on the challengers, bring on the naysayers, bring on those who want to have open debate about subjects relative to the incredibly rich, family offices. And when I say family offices, and now I'm going to get a little bit of hate from others in the more broad family office community, I always mean the single family office because that's who I am. That's what I do. That's what I have internally for myself and my holding company. And that's where I have my experiences, my competency on. When I don't have competency on something, well, that doesn't stop me from having an opinion. Okay, you got me there. So let me kind of lay a little bit of the framework. And if you haven't registered yet, you could do live or via webinar. Me and Jamie McLaughlin, we get down 11 a.m. digitally this upcoming next Wednesday from a week from today. If you're listening to this live, that would be July 10th, 11 a.m. Eastern. Now, I think I should change the title, but my focus group said survival work better than thrive because survival of the family office almost implies that it's backpedaling. I think it's an opportunity for family offices to thrive. And I'm going to lay down some of the reasons why a little broadly, because I got to keep some chips close to my vest for those that may look to challenge me and come on in certain debates that I can't give away all my quote unquote secrets now, and perhaps not even with Jamie. And there's always going to be new things I'm learning, which are always, of course, incredible about single family offices. So this is something that, again, I haven't seen anyone do. This is a boring vanilla industry. Everyone looks the same. No one challenges the status quo. And man, I really like to do those things. One, not look like everyone else. And two, to absolutely challenge the status quo. Status quo bias, in my opinion, is actually one of the worst biases that you could have. You get comfortable, and I hate to make it so monetary. When you're younger, perhaps you get comfortable in a set job making $70,000 a year. After a couple of years, you learn to live your life around that. The right attitude is to say, how can I be the best version of myself, become the best that I could be, and always strive and not be comfortable. I want to be free. I want to have the opportunity that money and capital provides me in terms of freedom in my residencies, where I live, what I own, what I do, and how I do what I do. And yes, I'm going to bluntly say that money is absolutely a part of that. Anyone who tells you anything differently is completely wrong, or honestly, they're misdirecting or simply lying to you. So on that point, great SFOs. Now we're going to get to the word, Angelo, what do you consider great? Because it's not a lot of them. I agree with some of the industry on that. Great SFOs solve problems. They are the utmost in privacy, control, and customization. Great single family offices, and underlyingly, of course, the families that create the leadership and culture, they play in decades. When you play in decades, you have no competition. Let that sink into the young ones, the entrepreneurs, and others. You're too quick sometimes to give up when you don't even know you're on the 1 yard line. You need to play in decades. Successful people and families understand that. Also, there's a cost for quality, and you want privacy control and immediacy. And those are, without that, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. So to me, I'm all about privacy control, which to me equates somewhat to freedom and customization. You can never beat a great single family office. It's an obsession. It's an obsession to me. An obsessed mind, if nothing else, is a prepared mind. And no, maybe obsession isn't normal. I don't want to be normal. Do you think billionaires are normal? Are billionaire families normal? Are people that are the top 1/10 of 1% at what they do, are they normal? Yeah, it specifically is a choice. The vast majority of people, and I mean the vast majority of people, including advisors and those around you, are conflicted. They don't know what they don't know, and some of them may outright confuse you. I'm going to go with about 10% of people around you are truly, really additive to value. Great SFOs use first principles thinking, something that Elon Musk and others talk a lot about. And in my master classes, those are things that we teach to have family offices be more practical and be the best that they could be. Great SFOs, I have a saying: bad family offices want to be left alone, good ones want to be mentored, and great ones want to be told the truth. Great SFOs are also revolutionary. When you combine the things that I'm saying here, and you're comparing potentially having an SFO or revamping one comparative to an asset manager, an MFO, and those that are outside of your unit, they are not part of your team. I'm sorry, I know I'm creating some angst and challenges here, and I want it. Bring it on. Let's do it. Let's have that debate. So great SFOs inherently are non-conflicted. They have assuming there's an alignment of interest with the executives as well as comp. So yes, that gets a little complex. That's a blanket statement that I made. But broadly speaking, that's the whole concept. I'm the family. It's my family office. I have control, privacy, and customization. They're 24/7 dedicated to me. Great SFOs have strong leadership starting from the top down. They have strong culture. They plan and they strategize. However, they focus on making progress. Don't waste your time. Focus on what matters. A lot of people, they plan. They don't take action, and they don't iterate upon the actions that they take, because usually the plan that you had to go into the actions and execution, it doesn't work out perfectly. This applies to sports, it applies to a football coach or team, it applies to life no matter what the situation is, and it absolutely applies to a family office. Great SFOs get things done. Activity per se means nothing. If your only answer is that, well, I've heard others, Angelo, you and other pundits, Ron Diamond and others, that most family offices are average. Let's forget about the mathematical accuracy of that. Broadly speaking, that's true. Now, where others would say they should be disbanded, I'm going to go be really. They should be disbanded. So what? They go into your asset management or MFO. You have conflicts of interest, I would argue. Do I have conflicts of interest that I'm an extreme advocate of the SFO and I get paid by single family offices in my SFO continuity? You bet you. So I wear those conflicts on my sleeve, but you can't question my dedication, my obsession dedicated to the community. So my answer is yes, most are mediocre. Do not disband. And whether it's me or selectively others out there, I know that I can often turn most of you around in 30 days with no change in personnel. Now, the most important four-letter word in the family office world is HIRE. It is hire. So people are the most important determinant. And that's really going to apply to any organization. I could say people, processes, and in today's world, technologies. So I'm going to go back a little bit to that word obsession. You put more effort into something than feels normal. Again, normal implies average. Average implies what is the average person? Probably overweight, doesn't have enough money and resources, and after being beaten out of them decade after decade, has limited ambition. And these are the things that I talk about with heirs and children of families when I speak at universities and colleges. And I share my research knowing a gazillion billionaires, single family offices, in my travel around the world to most continents, and being a researcher really at heart. I'm kind of a nerd, but let's be honest with it. These are all things that I'm interested in. You set deadlines that end in today. I think there's something called what Parkinson's law. I'm going to do this in a week. I'm going to do this in 30 days. I'm going to do this in 6 months. Successful people, AKA billionaires and incredible entrepreneurs, they get things done very quickly. Do they sometimes make mistakes? You bet you. They admit the mistake, they learn from it, they iterate, and they move forward. You need to be able to move fast. Now, this implies a little bit about how you think, about critical thinking, about thinking for yourself. I mentioned earlier, first principles thinking. These are all important things that in my masterclass of creating and reimagining into a top 1% family office, I know some of you find practice management and best practices boring. Those are the things that turn around very quickly if done right. Some of the principles of Peter Drucker, of Jim Collins, and others, but adapted more in today's world and specifically to the family office, are incredibly impactful. So a business is really nothing without a set of processes, inputs, outputs, decisions, and AKA standards, if you want to call that checklist. Nail the checklist and the workflows before making a decision, but it doesn't mean that needs to take forever. You should do things much, much faster than you're doing now. So I'm going to get to some specific topics. And those of you out there that disagree, it's okay. I want to learn from you too. And the audience wants more open and honest debates, as opposed to everything so vanilla, so plain, so down the middle. No one's ever rocking the boat. Like, I'm not afraid to talk about every and all aspects in the family office, about geopolitics, about politics in general, about aspects of having a diverse plan where we need to become more of a global citizen. As much as I love America and, of course, my great cowboy hat, we need to understand that things could go wrong. And these are sometimes uncomfortable conversations that everyone is afraid, I guess you could say, to have in the industry. Because my SFO continuity is only dedicated to initially 30 founding families and SFOs, I only get paid on that front directly from families and SFOs. I do not have to worry about placating to others in the community. Are there people that are service providers, vendors in the community that are awesome? You bet you. Are they great people and I want to be of value to them and their family and broadly in the community? Yes. Do I need their money? No, I get paid from the families and SFOs. That doesn't mean that there may not be some larger industry events that I perhaps do during the year. I also consult sometimes to vendors and sponsors, but I keep what I do at SFO continuity clean. So some of the topics I'm going to throw out there that will come up in my debate, let's call it that, with Jamie McLaughlin this upcoming Wednesday, and where I would love for you all to make suggestions and with both ideas and people about areas that we could throw on the table and have a debate on. Even if we don't have a chance to do a deep dive and research, our ability to think for ourselves, to be creative. If you all play poker or even timed chess, you do understand, going back to what I said earlier, about the ability to think fluidly, critically, and make decisions quickly. So yes, I know it may not correlate perfectly to investing and everything in life, but time, chess, and poker, I think, are incredibly valuable and work with you in terms of helping to make sharper and quicker decisions. So one, the fallacy of scale that others that argue kind of against the family office talk about. Scale, why does it, I don't get it. Why does a family office need scale? Scale is often a detriment, an albatross to being nimble, being fast, and being creative. It creates layers and layers of committees and management. It creates layers of bureaucracy and hierarchy. And those are not things that are really applicable. I don't know. Maybe Jamie and others will tell me why scale is specifically going to be so important. If I'm having or have a single family office, the family's already rich. Now, we may define that differently. Is that deca millions? Is it probably closer to hundreds of millions? But the old adage, and by the way, number 400 in the Forbes 400 is already 7 billion. And you bet you within 5 years, that number is going to double. The bottom is going to be probably 13, 14, 15, 16 million. So I guess if you're only a billionaire, I guess you're not really that rich in today's world. But to assume that you could only have a family office if you're a billionaire, you need scale, is completely incorrect. Now, I'm not going to, that subject we could dive into for 2 hours. I'm going to keep this flowing. Industry mergers. I would look at BDT and MSD, very intriguing. I'd look at, what is it, Viking into Rockefeller. I'd look at other. So the scaling of asset managers and MFOs, nothing to do with single family offices. With asset managers and MFOs is getting an influx of capital. Bigger is better. And quote unquote, that is their mantra. That is great, I guess. Do your thing. That has zero impact on me as a single family office. And no, we're going to get a little bit to the talent issue and things like that in a second. And third of all, to not kick the fund managers too much and broadly asset manager, because some of you are pretty awesome. Just some of you is a pretty light number. The woeful underperformance net of fees of most active managers, like, I absolutely feel that single family offices could simply do it better internally. That's the whole reason for having a single family office. I want privacy, control, and customization. I want to keep it all internal. I want to have 24/7. I want to have control. And I believe the industry is fugazing me. They're telling me that it's ultra complex, that I need to have a big team. I could probably make a direct investment in the triple Q and be definitely over 10 years, probably 95% of active managers net of fees. I could probably make 100% allocation. Okay, let's call it 70% to NVIDIA over the next year, 30% in the treasury bill, and beat most of you. And I'm completely liquid and I'm totally transparent. And if I decided to use a banking relationship, to use some option or other strategy, derivative or structured products to mitigate my risk and possibly limit my upside, I could. It is not hard. I'm actively doing it and going through it. I know so many family offices that are doing an incredible job. We make it way harder than it needs to be. Do I need active management to be an active allocator in gold? Do I need active management to be an active allocator into T-bills? I can argue even in real estate. And do I really need it? Are they doing that good of a job hedging or leveraging my risk in public stocks? Compared, you should all go and listen to the interview I did with Dr. Craig Kaplan yesterday on public AI opportunities. He's brilliant. We mentioned some names, some I kept in a private session for my members only. But and he gave an incredible thesis and opportunities that are currently out there. Let me tell you something. There is no dynastic wealth, generation after generation after generation after generation. There is no family empire without direct ownership and control of private companies. And no, when you invest in a private equity firm, and there's way too many of them, there's way too much capital chasing too few opportunities, especially at the higher level. You don't exactly know what's going on. You have no control of their exit. You have no control of your tax picture. And your younger generation is learning jack you know what. I don't get it. I created a holding company. I intertwine a private trust company for family governance and decision-making. And I make active allocating decisions, including, besides public interest in T-bills and Bitcoin and gold, all things, again, I do not for 1 second need active management on. Not for 1 second. And I will whip 90% of you in terms of what I'm doing. And the whole thing about you have big teams, you have big compliance. What does compliance mean to me? I'm a single family office. I don't need that. I'm not looking to be a GP. I'm not looking to worry about state regulators and things like that. All this nonsense that others bring up. Honestly, I think finally, like someone speaking up on the single family office side for the realities of how things are. Now, are there certain verticals that I may elect to have active allocations in where I elect to be more passive as an LP for maybe a small part of my portfolio? Will some active managers outperform anything that I do? Yes, it'll be relatively a small number net of fees, and I'm still giving up a level of control and liquidity, but I do get it. And do I love someone like Mark Spitznagel and Nassim and what they're doing at Universa? That would be impossible for me to replicate. We're maybe 1% of my portfolio, but that's tail risk black swan risk that could 30, 40x. Yeah, I think things like that, certain of them could be a big thing. But I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about investing in private companies. You need to engage your rising generation. Not everyone is going to be interested for the long term, but they should understand how the world works, how you negotiate, how you buy a business, what are some of the mechanics behind it, know how to read a profit and loss statement, know how to deal with banks, know how to deal with financing, and understand the leadership and culture that you're building in private companies. Even if you're quasi bringing in an operator into your holding company, this engages the rising generation. And I'm going to give a shout out. About 7 years ago, this woman was the first one who really kind of opened up my eyes to some of this. Many of you old guard in the industry remember Christy Keegler. By the way, she's still doing awesome, so I don't mean to imply that it's all back decades ago, but she was second in command for many a year of IPI. And I heard her in one of the presentations she gave on one of my digital programs say that she was really passionate about engaging the rising generation and getting their hands dirty and having control and controlling the tax picture. That is very, very important. And by the way, shame on you as a single family office. Shame on you. If at minimal, you can't do an investment policy statement and an asset allocation strategy, are you just outsourcing everything? Then you're not really a family office. And by the way, you may want to make your life easier. And I don't know what your situation is with heirs and rising generations. You're not teaching them anything. When it becomes incredibly passive like that, the family's disengaged. I've traveled to Europe. I've interviewed the Habsburgs, a gazillion other families, old American families. And some of them just don't want to talk about these kind of things, their inner secrets about buying banks and insurance companies and owning gold and doing that. But I'm telling you, these are some of the things in terms of that they're doing. So understanding the basics of creating a holding company, intertwining it with a private trust company, I think in most cases is way better than being an LP. And no, you do not need a large team. It's kind of a lie. It's just not true. And let's even ignore me. I know multiple, I'm going to say $3 to $7 billion families, some brand names that you would know, and their family office and or inclusive holdco teams are like 3, 5, 7 people. Like, I'm not taking my kitchen into a restaurant and now need state approval and need to satisfy customers. I don't care about being a GP. And I want to get to the cost issue in a second. So the whole thing about the war for talent, there's a war for talent and single family offices can't hire properly. It's easy if they know what they're doing. And yes, they need to pay people properly and sometimes even above working in a traditional organization. And by the way, non-financial, when I want to outsource my bill pay, opening up my mail, paying my bills, really? And the company that I'm hiring, is that going to be a senior person doing that? Is that going to be something that's going to be open to the company? Is the younger person doing it more likely, yes, to move on? And now someone else has to come in. When I have my single family office, it's under my hierarchy, my control. And yes, am I going to pay more for that because I want that? And that's the value that I'm getting. It is way too simplistic of an example. But let's just assume, putting on the investing side a little bit now, that I have 200 million ready to dedicate to so-called alternative assets, and I'm going to put it as an LP. And of course, we're so brilliant, we're only going to pick ones that we could, even if you're lucky to get into, that are going to be just awesome and always be great. Wink, wink, of course, once you get in, that of course is not going to be the case. But let's assume that it's 2 and 20. What a surprise. And by the way, wake up. This is not the 80s or 90s anymore where Cohen and others were rocking 30, 40% returns. And maybe then, depending on what the market's doing for the inefficiencies, you gladly, potentially, to some degree, become an LP and pay those fees. I don't know. I guess there's some brilliant geniuses out there probably using a hell of a lot of leverage. So what risk are they taking? That's another thing. What counterparty risk am I often taking being an LP? And don't get me started on VC. I'm going to invest in the triple Q and beat the massive majority of you. Do I think VC is cool and awesome? Yes. Do I think some incredible companies will come from it? Yes. Is it great for entrepreneurship, the spirit of America, or any country that it's in, and employment? Yes, yes, and yes again. But again, maybe that'll be a subject for a little different time. But back to my example. So I'm paying what, $4 million on annual management fees. Let's assume it goes up 20%. I admit I'm making the math a little too simplistic. But when I add up 20% of that gain of 40 million, I add them together, let alone some fees that are going to be on top of that are, of course, always hidden in the complex agreements that you're often not even familiar with. I'm well over $10 million in fees. You're telling me that I can't go and hire an incredibly talented person with probably two incredible people below them and have money to spare? You are kidding me. Now, should I do that and do I want to do it may be a different story, because that does put you in position of kind of, again, operating companies, hiring and firing, leadership culture, and maybe that is just not your thing. And the fact that you're paying for it more out of pocket, you feel it, versus giving 200 million to alternative managers and they debit that from your account. It is strictly just psychological. Damn it, stop being so damn passive. Take control. And you do that by building a great family office, which, by the way, maybe 3% of family offices are great, but so much more could be if they're willing to work on their practice management and best practices. And honestly, it's really not super hard. You do not need a multi-year or probably even 1-year engagement with someone like me. I would look at alignments of interest. Anyone who's not part of your single family office, their interests are with the company that they represent. And that's fine. Let's just be honest about it. And sometimes even enter the family office, do you have the right people that are dedicated, loyal, and obsessed and incredibly talented? Part of that's going to treat them and the comp. And no, don't get me started on remote family offices. Bullshit. For the most part. There are exceptions. And I do think the employer, the family office, has to be a little more fluid and flexible, maybe for several days a week than in the past, if the market is more trending towards the powers kind of in the employee. Another subject that I could go on and on and on about. And please stop asking the question, does the single family office make economic sense? And somehow that's one that the others in asset love for SFOs to effectively disband and give them all their money kind of love to bring up, as if they and banks and others work for free. I gave the example of the 2 and 20 model, how you could keep that internal. You could definitely find very, very talented people from a monetary model that I noted, giving them a piece of the action, maybe not 20%, but maybe it's 7%, 10%, 15%, with various golden handcuffs. And maybe one day, like Sid Bass with Richard Rainwater, plucked the 26-year-old Rainwater out of Goldman back in the day, 1971, give or take a little bit. But eventually, Rainwater wanted to be a billionaire and do his own thing. So you negotiate special terms to be a seed investor, possibly GP interest or favorable LP terms, and you realize sometimes great talent is going to do that. You tip your hat to them, you make a decision whether you want to move forward on the economic interest, and you wish them the best. Next up, bring it on. Now, again, do some of you want to go through the rolling up your sleeves and doing that work? And the answer might be no, and I respect that. So the whole thing about, oh, the single family office makes no economic sense, that's a complete lie and utter fallacy spun by people with conflicted interest. And I gave the example earlier comparative to maybe a junior person in legal and accounting that changes all the time. Yeah, I'm going to pay more money for total privacy, loyalty, and how I want things to be done within my own single family office. The fact that I even have to have this discussion and some of these debates is almost a little sad. Is there any other extreme advocate of a single family office like out there? I mean, I know there are certain consultants. I know there are others. And again, I always look for who butters the bread. What's the conflict of interest? How are you getting paid? If it's an event company, is it usually you're getting paid from sponsors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Like, heck, that kind of will answer a lot of your questions. There's reasons why most people are comfortable and want family offices to be mediocre. And that's just unacceptable for me. And if you're a family or family office executives that is happy with the status quo, happy with mediocrity, then you are not a good fit for me from a consultative or my SFO continuity, my membership organization. I have 30 founding members that I'm building to. I'm almost there. I am incredibly active this summer. And this is some of the raw, unfiltered, specific best practices and content, let alone in-person peer-to-peer, that you're going to get by joining and being a member. So as I'm wrapping up, I did want to keep this by Angelo standards on the short side, and apparently I kind of failed at that. I do look forward to this upcoming Wednesday, the 10th, 11 a.m. Eastern with Jamie McLaughlin. Jamie is awesome. He's very smart. He's going to be a very worthwhile, let's go with the word, quote unquote, competitor. And hopefully there's going to be certain things I learned from that. What ideas do you all have? What people would you recommend that you can make a connection to that may disagree with me on any or other of the topics within the frame of survival and thriving of the family office, specifically the single family offices that I brought up? And I'm going to be respectful and friendly with them. That doesn't mean that we may not raise our voice and have a little bit of a sparky type debate. And that's okay. That makes it more fun and engaging from such a boring and looking to be so politically correct and down the middle community. The hell with that. Let's just throw it on the table and have great, open, and honest discussions. Someone is asking, and feel free to send in a question or two, how many legitimate family offices are there in the market? Yeah. Most people, including on LinkedIn and that go to conferences that call themselves a family office, it's usually complete and utter bullshit. They're not. They might have a little bit of capital, but usually they're there to offer or to sell you something. So how many real single family offices are there? For a variety of reasons, including the global markets and the fact that they don't, for the most part, or some exceptions, have to register. The honest answer is we don't really know. Some of the deepest research was done in 2019 by UBS. It showed about 7,300. And by the way, there's a truckload of super rich people that still have active private businesses that kind of treat that a little bit with their CFO and others as their family office. That's a big no-no. There's lots of things that could go wrong. They shouldn't do that, but that's not counting into having a real single family office, arguably defined as at least one non-family member key executive and the proper structures. We learned a lot from Lender versus the IRS that you need to have, preferably in a great state like Wyoming, of course, thanks to the cowboy hat too. So it's estimated now, because a lot of family offices have been created since then, that the number of real single family offices globally is probably somewhere around 11 to 13,000. But yes, as you're asking here, there's, I don't know, if I'm a real single family office, am I out there promoting it so heavily? Like, why? There's nothing really in it for me. You also ask, is there a framework that shows the life cycles of the family office and where they should be? Well, those are some proprietary models that I work with in my consulting with family offices. Broadly answering your question, most family offices are very siloed. Again, they're very mediocre, and people get very comfortable. There's a lack of obsession, in the good way of saying that, and practice management and best practices. Do sometimes people need to be shuffled? You bet you. But often you'll be surprised if the people have some level of competency and are willing to follow a framework and be disciplined. And there's like 3 practice management techniques that I could implement, I mean, honestly, in the first week, but let's broadly go with 30 days, that will have an immediate impact. You're at least going to go from maybe being okay to being good. Now, the chasm, as Jim Collins writes about, from good to great, which may only be 10%, it is very hard. But absolutely, it's within reach as well. So thank you for those questions, Jason. If there's any other questions, there might be one other. Well, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Stephen. Two people that I've known for a long time and wonderful friends, and a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. So again, I throw it out there. I am open to ideas, and maybe you're someone who's totally disagreeing with me. Send me a direct message, a DM on LinkedIn. I mean, I have X and other platforms as well, but probably a LinkedIn message, possibly X would be the second best, or direct email. My email is angelo@angelorobles.com. Now, if I get bombarded, I can't have everyone on about every little subject. I have to be somewhat, I got a lot of things I'm covering. I'm doing 10X forums on exponential investment opportunities, much of them, by the way, public companies, so they're easy. I'm doing an Unstoppable Heirs program. I do social soirees for my members that are strictly just social and interacting. And I got a lot of things upcoming on setting up holding companies, private trust companies, and more of the structuring issues in a family office, which all intertwine with survival and thriving in the family office. But I can't have everything and every day of the week be effectively a debate. And things do start to get a little old after a while. So you got to kind of shake things up. But in the meantime, at least I would say for this summer, bring it on. If you disagree, let me know. Let me know that you're open to being on in an open platform where we could potentially have a discussion. Maybe it's a brief one. Maybe it's 30 minutes. Maybe it's longer form. We'll see. Or maybe you simply have an idea for someone or an idea in general that I would benefit from. What I would state is if you're recommending someone, you maybe include their LinkedIn profile or contact info. So it's not just a name. I get an opportunity in terms of to reaching out to them and seeing if they want to do it. And by the way, there's some people that do want to do it, but I'm not going to use the word they're afraid. Well, some of them are. They don't want to do it live. They want to do it recorded, which is okay. I would prefer to do it live across my socials and via webinar, and then the recording goes broadly to everyone. But if you would prefer to do it only in a recording, I suppose I would be okay with that. So bring it on. I want you to disagree. I want you to challenge some of the opinions and thoughts that I have on this and other related subjects to survival and thriving of, again, when I say family office, I mean single family office, period. Again, none of this means that there's not incredible asset managers, banks, attorneys, accountants, MFOs out there. There are some that are really, really good. Does practically any family office need some level of outside resources to not become too insular? Yes. But to tell me what's the economic sense, to tell me that mediocrity is acceptable, to tell me that everything you do is going to be better and better, how do you define that? Is that all quantitative? Is that qualitative? How about my privacy, my control, and my customization? Does that matter to me? You bet you it does. And again, don't get me started on the investing front, because that's a battle that I think the vast majority, I'm just going to whip your butt. You're going to lose, period. And if you feel otherwise, then say so. Don't just hide behind the curtains. Send me a DM, send me an email, and let's see where it goes. Again, I'm very active on socials, including LinkedIn. You can also reach me at my website, which simply is my name, angelorobles.com. So my email, what a surprise, is angelo@angelorobles.com. And again, for those of you that are active members in my SFO continuity, I greatly appreciate you. We're incredibly active this summer. If not, go on angelorobles.com. There's a couple of opportunities left. I have incredible members, incredible. And the discussions that we're having on this topic internally, on best practices in the family office, on AI, on 10X investing strategies, on Unstoppable Heirs, it's incredible. It's the best internal peer discussions. I've been in this community for decades, and the fact that it effectively is conflict-free is awesome. That does not mean that there's not great experts in any of those arenas that we don't occasionally bring in, maybe after the peer-to-peer aspect of it, to bounce ideas off and to challenge ideas among all of us. Of course, that's valuable. Don't twist what I'm saying relative to that. And again, I make no bones about it. I am an extreme advocate of single family offices, of families having holding companies, and a bigger and bigger advocate, and I want to hear no excuses, of a private trust company. And then how they're intertwined is some of the art along with the science and some of the programming, some of it a little public, most of it more private and dedicated, including this summer for my members. On that note, as we're wrapping up here on a Wednesday, July 3rd, it's beautiful weather out here in rural Connecticut. I hope to make it out to Wyoming. Actually, it's next week, so that'll be a lot of fun. Always great in terms of being there. I think there might have been one question that came in, but I'll continue a little bit of my rant, then I'll come back to Tom's question. And I want all of you, even if you're international, it's okay. I love to travel. I love my good friends in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Chile, Brazil, some of the work I've done in the Middle East, etc. It's awesome, but it's a big thing for us Americans. Independence Day is a huge holiday. It's the birth of America, our founding fathers, and built an incredible country. I'm not going to get into some of the societal and political issues now. As the election progresses closer, you bet you those are going to be subjects. I don't give a damn about being politically correct. Those are going to be subjects that I look to be fair and balanced that I'm going to cover. And if you have people that you think would be good guests for me to have on either aisle, bring it on. I'm open to that. And if they want to do a debate, I could do that too. I could do that practically impromptu on anything relative to geopolitics, economics, money, investing, and effectively for me, tying it in terms of the family offices. So before I take that final question, everyone, of course, have an amazing July 4th, an amazing summer. Know that I'm incredibly active this summer, incredibly active, and would love for you all to be a part of it. Now, when looking at Tom's question, can you elaborate on the suggested staff structure for an SFO? And he writes, I imagine it changes with AUM. Sure. Now, again, I know multiple right up there to the Forbes 400 level, up to like 7 billion, that have relatively modest single-digit staffs. Once you start to become 10 million, a decabillionaire, then that gets to be, depending on family dynamics and generation in the family and how many family members and distribution issues, then it does get to be more complex and more complicated. People call things differently. For some, it's the head of the family office, the president, the CEO, the chairman, which is usually going to be a family member. So we're not going to have the time to get into what would be recommended from how decisions are made in governance, what kind of structures, what kind of committees. In broadly answering your question, you're going to look to have someone who perhaps is a head of the family office. You want to have at least one non-family member executive, some of that for the lender versus IRS, favorable tax treatment and advantages of treating it like a business. Again, another subject too deep to go into for just a couple of minutes that we have remaining. Almost every family, the monetary part, so let's call it CIO, is going to be anchoring and important. And what did I state earlier? Like, even if you're a believer in allocating to managers near exclusively, and that's not my gig, but I don't judge. And to think that I'm unfair to that, go and listen to my interview with Donatella Ceccarelli, from an Italian, incredibly bright, talented woman that ran a deca-billionaire family in Central Europe and allocated sometimes to over 100 different LPs and did a damn good job and got wonderful returns. So can that model work? Yes. Is it what I see as the preferred model? No. Does it take a lot of intense staff and hiring and firing GPs that you get in and out of? And it's a lot of work, but there are some people that feel, as opposed to doing it internal, that's the route they want to go, not just in a limited basis, but exclusively. So again, man, this is overused. You know, one family office, you know one, but it's kind of true. CFO function and COO. So really, anchor is going to be the head of the family office. Let's call it a president. Let's call it a CFO, and let's call it a COO. You're likely going to have an analyst or two supporting staff. You may have internal concierge services. So right there, I'm describing probably what at least is going to be a 5 to 7 person SFO. I've seen holding companies where simply I'm looking for one vertical that I'm looking to have controlling interest in private companies. I bring in an operator that's going to be the more day-to-day person of that. And if you really want to get cute, sometimes I may look to bring in a turnaround specialist and other supporting staff. And then I'm growing and I'm scaling. But remember the example I gave earlier with only hundreds of millions of dollars, all going into expensive, unclear exactly what I got in a liquid. Well, they're going to be liquid if I'm doing it internally, but I have some leverage opportunities. I'm paying a lot of money. I'm just not feeling it. I want to control. Maybe it's just me. I want the control. So for me, the opportunity of diverting part of that capital to building internally is what really matters. But yeah, once you start to get, depending on family members, generation, and AUM above, especially multiple billions, and billions, then you may need to have a larger staff. The whole thing about that I need to have a CIO and supporting staff of 30, 40, 50 people, it's so wrong. It is laughable and just not true. It's a complete and utter misdirect. Now, again, you want to create something like Michael Dell and build GP structures and take in other families, then that could change. But for the most part, really, and these so-called professionals, net of fees, even sometimes without that, but let's go with it to make my point, because that's the reality, the net of fees, really, they're beating these indices. And by the way, they're often cherry picking the indice that they want to benchmark and be a part of because it often serves their purpose. They should be picking a different one. They know that. I know that. Look at their 13Fs and things that they're holding, and you'll come to some of the same conclusions as me. And even though they're cherry picking, they often still fail to meet the measly benchmark, wink, wink, that they're picking. And again, I like to be a little comical once in a while, but I hate to kick them when they're down. But hey, that's the reason for it. If you don't like it, send me something and come on my program. Let's have a debate. And by the way, I know some of you are going to be sending in, I've made a truckload of mistakes. I have been humbled over and over again, and I'm wrong. And I like to admit that I needed to be humble, admit when I'm wrong, learn from that, iterate, and move forward. I am very much an imperfect person. I think maybe in a debate, I'd probably take a little bit of the Eminem from 8 Mile. When he's in the rap battle contest, he brings up the bad shit about him before the enemy could. So being transparent, being open, admitting that imperfect, I still have a lot to learn, I think is very important. And really the meaning of these maybe intense conversations or debates is so I could learn, and in the process, hopefully you all could as well. But at the end of the day, and one of the most common things that billionaires tell me, including Michael Saylor, and he's a very well-known billionaire, learn to think for yourself. Again, learn to think for yourself. What you learned in school, what you have learned from your past experiences, the dynamics of how the world works, how dynamics work, how governments can manipulate inflation and interest from the investing side. You may think that this is how it's done and it should work, and it's just not the reality of how it's working with people that are bigger and AKA governments more powerful than you. You have to realize that. The world doesn't revolve around you, even if you're a deca billionaire. So on that note, everyone, I hope you're going to enjoy this series over the summer and maybe a little bit extended. Don't forget my, let's call it debate with Jamie McLaughlin, Wednesday, July 10th at 11. If you don't have the info for that, send me an email and bring it on. Bring on the naysayers. I'm laying down the gauntlet. Bring on the challenges. Recommend people. I will absolutely, well, if I get hundreds of requests, I mean, come on, I only have so much time. But I'm going to do the best I could to respond and be interactive, assuming the people that either you or you're recommending have any interest or the guts to want to come on and deal with the heat. Thank you very much. Have a great day and a great July 4th, America. Thank you so much.